Welcome to the DCS Fitness Education Podcast. My name is Ben McDonald, and today on the show, I have got a conditioning legend, a movement legend, Eric Degatte. How are you, my mate?
Went to bed early last night just so I can try to keep up with you, at least keep you within eye distance.
Mate, I had a cup of coffee just before we came on, so I am ready. I am on it like a Shakespeare sonnet, my friend.
I love it.
And for everybody who's watching, who's on YouTube, I today am wearing glasses and I've not got my massive earphones on either, because everybody just ripped me for having massive earphones. So I've taken them off and I'm now using an external sound source. So you can see that really my ears are massive. The earphones just about covered them, you know what I mean? But the glasses are there, Eric, to make me look intelligent, you know what I mean?
That's it. My grandfather used to tell me, you look real smart if you keep your mouth shut.
Brilliant. Okay. So today, my friend, we're going to be talking about all things conditioning related. So if you are ready to go, my man, we can just get straight into it.
I love it. I'm a baseball guy, so they teach us prepare for the fastball and adjust to the curve. So here we go.
Oh, I like it. Oh, there'll be a couple of curves, my friend, I'm sure. All right. Question number one for you, Eric. When it comes to conditioning a beginner, what are your big focuses, my man?
Okay, so one of the companies I work for is Functional Movement Systems, and our tagline is first move well, then move often. Sometimes we flip that in fitness, and everything is based on how many can you do, how much can you do, how long can you do it for. And my first question is, can you even do it? Number one, before I worry about can you swing a kettlebell, can you even touch your toes, and make sure you move well before we go ahead and move often. Usually a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I think, you know what, like a key piece that we cover with DTS is capacity versus demand. You've got to make sure your client or anyone that you're working with has the capacity for the demand that you're going to place upon them. And you do that primarily, as you just said there with the FMS and stuff, no matter what the assessment protocol is, it should be that the assessments drive the choices that you make, you know what I mean? And I think you put it really well there, my man.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, if you're not using your assessments to drive your program, then what's the point of doing it? Because then what you have is you have a workout. That's the difference between a workout and a program. I can go on YouTube and get workouts all day. Go to an expert to get a program.
Nice, my man. Oh, Eric, you got through that question quick. This could be a short one today, but let's see, because you never know. We might be expanding on a few of these. All right.
So.
So question number 2. What are your key markers and go-to assessments in each phase of conditioning, Eric?
Okay, so obviously I gave away the first one. The first one I start with is some type of movement screen to see, is there anything that could be a potential barrier for movements? And most importantly, does anything hurt? We find that with the screen that we have 20 to 30% of our people are in pain just doing basic movements with no load. Well, if it hurts to do that, loading that and challenging that is certainly not going to make it better. We need to get that figured out first. So first thing is make sure you move well and give you some type of movement screen. From there, then it's kind of goal dependent. And there's kind of 3 directions you could go. One is, someone just wants to feel better. And that's where we're going to really focus on their movement and make sure that they're moving as well as they need to for whatever their activities are. The second is I want to look better. Well, I need to get a baseline for that and do some body composition testing and look at what are we dealing with here. So the scale is not going to be our judge, but we're going to have something more specific to say, okay, you actually have changed the makeup of your body composition, but you may or may have not lost a pound. And then the last piece is the biggest piece that I work with day to day is performance. Is to look at you, number one, athletically, to see, do you have all the components of work capacity, postural capacity, motor control, power, and those sorts of things as a baseline as an athlete. And then maybe even go a bit further into looking at the specificity of your sport As I said, I work a lot with baseball, so I may do something like a evaluation where we look at the screen to see if there's certain movements that are only specific to the demands of baseball, right? The amount of external rotation that a baseball pitcher needs is freakish, and the average person doesn't need that. So I'm not going to base the norms and say every single fitness person needs that. But if I have a baseball player, I need to make sure that they can actually meet those minimums. And there's a big difference between minimum, maximum, and optimum. Right. So minimums, the FMS doesn't predict that you're going to be a Hall of Fame athlete. It just says, okay, you pass the first hurdle. You have basic movement competency. And you and I could argue over beer and peanuts all night about. And that's what we were joking before. That's what basically social media is. It's arguing over that last. Eric Cressy had a great post. It's that last 4.99%. We agree on 95% of the stuff, right? But instead of arguing what's perfect, let's check the boxes and make sure that you at least have minimums, right? And then when you get to maximums, well, how much of that maximum is actually going to carry over? Meaning that, okay, we know that strength is extremely important, but there's only a certain amount of strength that you need for whatever your given activity is going to be. So I need a lot more strength in my offensive lineman for football than I do for someone who's a golfer, because it's necessarily not going to translate. They're not having the same demand. So it has to be relative to the individual.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think that's where some people fall down, Eric, is Stu McGill said it great, where he was like, what you need is sufficient strength. It's sufficient for what you are doing. If you're a housewife and you're doing like chores around the house, then you need a certain amount of strength, and you need to have. If you need this much strength, so if you can have a little strength reserve, then that is fantastic, because you're never then working at your max. Do you see what I mean? And I thought that was a really cool way of looking at it. And when we live in sort of extremes, like we go to one end of the spectrum where you've got like the strongmen guys who are just picking up massive loads all the time, the body gets beat up. If you go to the other end of the spectrum where you've got people who are sedentary, who don't do anything at all, don't pick anything up, then the body gets beat up in a different way. So when you live in these crazy extremes, I think that's when McGill said, or when Stu said, sufficient strength. I thought that was a cool way of putting it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you can take that and carry it over to anything. We talk about movement. Look at someone's trunk rotation, and they'll say, "Was that good?" And I'll say, you have all the rotation you need to be an accountant. And I'll say, but if you're going to go out and swing those golf clubs for 96 holes next week, we probably need to get a little bit more in there, because that's a little bit more demand. So it's got to be relative to the individual. So it's absolutely, do you at least meet the minimums? And then even when you're programming your exercise, it's like, do I give you 30 pounds or 40 pounds or 20 pounds? Well, the art of training is finding that edge of your ability where you're challenged, but you're successful. And that's the first lesson I teach every client that I train, is that we need to be two things for this to work. You need to be challenged. If you don't challenge yourself, your body has no reason to change. The whole reason exercise works is that whole general adaptation syndrome of, okay, I challenge myself. My body goes, oh my gosh, I know what you just did, but if you keep doing that, I have to get better at it. Big, strong man, lift heavy, strong things. Body gets good at lifting heavy, strong things. Doesn't make him a great marathon runner, right? So it is specific to, that's the SAID principle, the specific adaptation to the imposed demand. So I got to have challenge, but then I also have to be successful. So if I can squat 200, but you put 300 on the pounds on the bar, I'll be really challenged. I will not be really successful. Okay. If you put 100 on the bar, I'll be really successful. I'm not going to really be challenged. So where's that sweet spot? That's the art of what we do.
I like that, mate. I like that. And for a lot of the people that are listening or watching, on the back of your shirt, maybe not now, but when you're working, on the back of your shirt, above trainer, it says personal. You know what I mean? So it's almost like with your assessments, with looking at the client behind the program that you're designing, it's almost like you're making it personal, Eric.
Yeah. I mean, you want to go into the nomenclature, we're called strength coaches. Well, what if I don't need strength, right? Then what do I do? Strength and conditioning. Well, what if I don't need conditioning? There's a lot, there's a performance pyramid that I build out to show my athletes. It has 60 different variables that go into you being an athlete, what shows up on the field, the court, track. And so strength is one box out of 60, right? So if you've checked that box, now you need to know what to do with the other 59.
Nice, mate. Nice. We always say on for DTS, it's movement for quality of life, cardiovascular health for longevity of life. So it's when you go like too far down one route, it's like Louis Simmons. He wrote an article about, he was strong as an ox, the strongest he'd ever been, but he felt like he was going to have an heart attack when he walked up a flight of stairs. Do you know what I mean? So it's just like, he was as strong as an ox, but he was like, I need to flaming get some cardiovascular training in, some conditioning cardiovascular wise, because I'm just, that's way dropping off for me. You know what I mean?
And when I deal with athletes, here's what the problem is that people want to emulate what the best do. They don't understand what the best have sacrificed to be the best. I mean, if anybody who watched the ESPN Last Dance, you saw how much that Michael Jordan sacrificed of a lot of things in his life just so he could be the very best. And just following what he does is not going to make you Michael Jordan, right? So there's a lot of athletes who get there in spite of what they do, and then also what they do. Like you said, Louis Simmons and what he's put out of the West Side are some of the strongest power lifters in history, right? But if you ask the average person, how many power lifters they know, they might not be able to name one, right? So you're training for a very, very specific thing. Same thing goes with bodybuilding. Bodybuilding has pretty much laid the groundwork of what a lot of people think as fitness, yet bodybuilding is a very, very, very small niche sport and doesn't require much in terms of physical ability other than stand on stage in your underwear and make 4 turns, right? So that doesn't apply to most of the people walking around who, like you said, I want to live long, feel well, and be able to do the things I want to do throughout the day.
Fantastic, mate. No, I think that's great. I love all of them points, my friend. Love it. Okay. Number 3 then. So what would your top tips be for improving endurance, strength, and power output? There's a lot there, Eric. There's a lot to unbox, my man. And that's why you're answering this question and not me.
Well, that's why I do my homework too. Okay, so the first thing is when we look at endurance, I think one of the biggest things that's overlooked, you're talking about cardiovascular, cardiorespiratory exercise. Half of the word is respiratory, correlating with breathing. And nobody thinks about their breathing. Like, breathing is probably one of the most overlooked things, and now it's starting to get more attention. But if you look at the most ancient forms of physical activity, whether it be yoga or martial arts, it was focused in breath, and your breath regulated everything, whether it was your movement, whether it was your psychological state, or whether it was your power output. You listen to a martial artist throw a punch, and it's a verbal, explosive breath. So breath is maybe one of your most important things. So when we talk about conditioning, being able to manage your breathing, like heaving with your hands on your knees with the open mouth breathing. I always tell my athletes, if the guy across from you is breathing through his mouth, you won. He's done, right? Because that's a sign of a sympathetic fight or flight, oh my gosh, I'm about to die type breathing, right? So if you can learn some of the tactics of nasal breathing and learning how to manage your breath, that's the first cue I always talk about. The second thing is make sure it's specific to your activity. Your conditioning for mixed martial arts is very different than your conditioning for running in the 800 meter. So make sure that when we talk about conditioning, we're on the same page. And nothing's a better example of that. Of Lance Armstrong was the greatest cyclist in the world. Then when we ran a marathon, he was a middle of the road marathoner. And both of them are considered cardiovascular activities, but it was specific to the demands of that activity, right? So make sure it's specific. And then you want to also monitor quality. The 2 ways monitor quality is one, your breathing. As soon as you switch from nasal breathing to mouth breathing, you're starting to red line. Now that's not a bad thing, just you can't red line all the time, right? You can do that sometimes. The other thing is monitoring heart rate. And there's some great tools out there for that. whether it's Whoop or some of those things. I actually love the stuff that Joel Jamison's doing, and I've been using his Morpheus band to find those training zones. And having those training zones be adaptive is I think super important.
Nice, mate. Yeah, I mean, brother, like breathing on the DTS level 1, breathing is the first assessment and the first thing that we retrain. Like we say when we start getting into program design, and it's funny because the students are like, we say, well, what would you do with this case study? And they all look at the case study and they're like, oh, do you know what? I'd look at breath first. We say, no, you don't look at breath first. Breath is a given. Breath, you don't even write it in the program. It's like you are going to work on that with every client. So take breath out of it because that's a given you're going to work. And they're like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? It's like, so what would you work on after that? Because we are always got to work on that. And we had, we actually ran a podcast series on breathing. We had Patrick McKeown. He came on, the author of The Oxygen Advantage. We had Rob Wilson from The Art of Breath. He came on, and it like the stuff that he was talking about was fantastic. And then we had a couple called Jen and Thane Blunston, and they run a dentist surgery in Calgary. So Thane is the dentist, and Jen, his wife, is she's a oromyofascial re-educator, and she talks about tongue position, breathing mechanics, like, and how it affects what Thane does with the jaw and the teeth. I was like, it blew me away, you know what I mean? So when we talk about breathing being the fundamental component, mate, I think that's like across, as you just said there, across absolutely every discipline. Breathing is the fundamental, because you can't get strong. You can't be strong without breathing, without correct breathing mechanics. Or you can be, but you see where I'm going with it. Like, correct breathing mechanics will increase your strength output. Correct breathing mechanics will increase your cardiovascular, cardiorespiratory output. Do you see what I mean? So it's all these different things. I find it dead interesting, and it's something that many years ago in the training environment, many years ago, it'd be like, hey, listen, we're just going to pick the weight up, you know, don't panic too much about that. And now it's like, mate, we need to, this is a fundamental component. It's part of the foundation of everything else that we do.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And then, you know, when it comes to strength, we kind of talked about, you know, do you need maximal strength? Do you need optimal strength? And then do you need specific strength versus just overall functional strength, right? So do I need specific strength that there's qualities of force output specific to your sport or activity that I need to train? Whereas, am I a rotationally based sport? Am I more of a unilaterally based sport? How long do I need to produce this force for? That all comes into play. And then for the average fitness person, you want to make sure that we're adding fitness without taking away from function, right? And that often gets lost. My expression, and you'll like this, is if you work out all the time but you can't help me move a couch, your workout sucks, right? You're missing the whole point, right?
Yeah, I think what we say is the gym should get you better at life. Not you will get better at the gym, but that shouldn't be the overall objective. The objective should be to get you better at life. And I think, I think that's a great way of looking at it, my mate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and when people ask questions specifically about any drill, you know, my first question back to them is, well, are you training to get better at training, or are you training to get better, right? Am I using the deadlift to learn hip hinging so it'll carry over to me getting up out of my stance, or something that's going to be, or picking things up off the ground, or something that's actually functionally related? Or am I training the deadlift because maybe I am a power lifter, or maybe I'm a CrossFitter, and that is my sport, right? I am training to get better at training. It's not a bad thing. I just need to know the difference, because that's going to change how we go about the exercise. Right?
100%.
And then the last thing I asked about is power. I think one of the biggest things that gets, I think the misconception with power is that if you just have a power exercise, you know, power clean, that automatically makes you powerful. That's not necessarily the case. One of the biggest, you know, power has the time factor in it. So I think having some sort of, I think intent is huge, meaning how much effort you put into it, and then having some sort of feedback. So like a medicine ball throw against the wall, I always say the louder that slam is and the more the ball bounces back, that's your feedback. How much force output did you get into there? Or if you do a rope wave, and how high can you make that rope go up? That's what we're looking for. And then if you want to get really fancy, you could use some sort of tendo unit or a push unit or something like that that'll actually give you the feedback. That's really power. And the toughest things for athletes to understand is you can't get powerful and tired at the same time, right? So power is an expression of all out ATP, hair on fire, 5 to 10 seconds. That's it. And if you're getting tired, you're probably not getting powerful.
Mate, that's a fantastic way of explaining it. I like it. I like the hair on fire as well. But that makes me a little jealous of your haircut, brother. You know what I mean?
Well, barbers aren't open during Corona, so I'm doing my best on my own here.
I think you look fresh, my man. I think you look fresh. All right. So question number 4. What are your top tips for training the average client around their lives?
This applies to everybody, and it applies well to athletes as well. But even for the average client, I would say the biggest gift I can give any of my clients is better body awareness. And what I mean by that is, let's look at it from one side of the spectrum when we talk about pain. There's a lot of people who walk around like this. And here's what I mean. Fingers crossed that they have this on and off back pain, hip pain, knee pain, whatever it may be. And they don't know what causes it. And they don't know what makes it go away other than slamming a bunch of Advil. And they wake up every morning, whether it's the day of their big meeting, the day of their golf tournament, or the day of their son or daughter's wedding, and they're saying, please, not today, right? And that's a really kind of a crappy way to live. And so if you can explain to them that, look, that if you have some things in your body that don't move well, and maybe it's because you sit all day and it's caused some postural changes, or maybe you don't learn how to use certain movements and you don't know how to extend your hips or whatever it may be. And you could say, look, if you could just do these 2 or 3 things every single day, and they realize that every time they do those, they don't have to be like this. They feel great. And so being able to empower them to say, hey, I know when my body feels right, and I know when it's wrong, and I know what I can actually do to change it, or I can at least communicate that to someone who knows how to change it. That's a game changer. Like, that's going to be the biggest difference in terms of getting them aware of their body. Second thing is workouts are fine. You want to have fun. Like, I have a friend of mine who's a spin instructor, high energy guy. We have a blast. We go to his class. That's a workout, right? And I could throw workouts into my program, right? But that's the difference between, as I said before, having a program versus having a workout. You just do a bunch of workouts. You're just kind of throwing a bunch of ingredients in the pot and hoping you make sauce. And with a last name like the Gotti from New Jersey, we know how to make sauce. And I can tell you, you can't just throw any ingredients in there and make it like grandma did. So, and then with that information, like everybody going on social media and saying, oh, this is good, oxygen deprivation masks are good, or kettlebells are good, or this are good. That's just information. And one of my mentors taught me a long time ago is that information without a system is chaos. All right. The key is to have a system. I want to learn every single day. And I always wake up every morning and saying, you know what, everything I've learned to this point could be wrong. And my job today is to try to prove it. Right. And so I'm going to try to learn something. And if that changes something within the system, it tweaks the system. It doesn't have me throw everything out and go to a whole new style of training on Monday morning. It basically says, okay, where does this fit in a system? And does it make sense for me or whoever the individual is I'm training?
I like that, my mate. A system saves yourself time, effort, and money.
Love it.
That's what a system does, brother.
Love it.
Because we've got our own, we've got the 7-step system, you know what I mean? So everything is systemized. Everything is a systemized approach to training. But I think as far as with the system, what you've got to make sure is that the system is not ego driven. So it's not like you must use these assessments. You must use this mobility. You must use this stability. It's like with the 7-step system for DTS, it's like assessment number one, step number one in the system is assessment. Doesn't matter what assessments you do, so long as they're decent assessments, you know what I mean? But it doesn't matter. Like if they go, they can do the DTS assessments, they come and do FMS, and the student says, oh, do you know what? I like that assessment. Use it, but still pop it into that systemized approach. But you just, as you get more and more information, just enables you to have a little more depth in each sort of step of the system. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the same thing goes when I teach for FMS. I could teach a workshop that has a chiropractor, has an athletic trainer, has a strength and conditioning coach, has a yoga instructor, has a personal trainer, has a group fitness instructor. And so I always say, this is just our scoreboard, right? To see if they have movement competency. What you do to fix the active straight leg raise, I don't really care. That's your job as an artist. We'll give you some suggestion. And even better than you being able to monkey see, monkey do, and regurgitate my exercises, what I'd rather have you do is see my exercise and say, you know what, there's a yoga pose or a kettlebell drill or a mobilization that I do that actually would work even better than that. And then the only deal with that is you got to teach me that, right? So I can improve my bag of tricks.
I love it, mate. I love it. I love that. All right, fantastic, brother. Okay, question number 5, my man. What are your top tips for training an athlete for sports performance?
I kind of alluded to it before, and the first thing I tell every team, every athlete, is that every rep, every set, every workout is for us as a team to win a championship, as an individual to make you the best athlete you could be. It's not to get better at training, right? And so there's lots of things. Like I said, there's 60 things that are going to go into what shows up. And so I need to get just enough of those, like you said, with a little bit of reserve, and use that Occam's razor approach, that to simplify it down to the most fundamental level, and anything beyond that is superfluous. It's extra, and I need to be working on those other factors. And so once I've gotten enough strength, I need to work on another attribute. And once I've gotten enough, and I may have 2 athletes that play the same position for the same team and the same age, and they may have 2 different profiles. And that's why testing is important, to say, okay, well, I can't just assume everybody needs the same thing because of their age, their position, what they are, what they look like. I need to figure out, when have I gotten you enough of this that I can now give you the next thing, and what's the most simple way that I can deliver that, right? I love the reductionist type of approach, like a Pavel Tsatsouline will say, okay, well, I can take that and boil it down to 2 moves, right? And his books are based on these elegant programs that look at both ends of the continuum, from mobility to power, and then everything in between. And how do I boil that down into 2 activities that are going to address both sides of the continuum, and then fill in the gaps with that, what he calls is what the hell effect.
Nice, my mate. I like it, Eric. Mate, I'm loving it. All right, so we are already at question number 6. What are your thoughts on going hard in the paint every training session, my man?
I love it, but not every training session. Okay. You understand that most people base it on the hardware, right? They base it on the tissue, as opposed to forgetting about that, what makes that tissue go. You cut your bicep off, lay it on the table, it's going to lay there stupid. It's not going to do anything. You hook up a car battery to it, it'll start to contract because it just runs on impulses from our nervous system, whether consciously or reflexively. So it's that nervous system that you have to consider, and what actually feeds that nervous system. Like I said, when we're looking at power, it doesn't need a ton of volume, and it needs to be stimulated with the proper stimulus to create the proper result. And if you're training for high velocity, high power, high intensity, it's going to need to recover. So that means you need to kind of have this undulating high-low, and you also need to be able to recognize where the individual is at. So one of the biggest things that I've been looking at in the last, probably year or 2 with my individual clients is looking at their daily readiness, right? So the first thing you do before we do anything in a session, before you touch a foam roller or a weight or anything, is I take 3 minutes and I kind of assess where you're at right now. And that may include anything from just a real quick movement screen that I do, to looking at your grip strength, to looking at a quick breathing screen, maybe a motor control, and kind of looking at where are you at now. And if I'm tracking and I can see, okay, well, your breath hold time is down way, way from last week. What's going on? And then you start the conversation, because I think one of the best assessments is a good conversation. Is they'll say, well, yeah, I slept terribly last night. Oh, well, is everything all right? Yeah, stuff at work has been crazy. Now you start to get a window to say, okay, well, the biggest thing that we have to remember that we're influencing is that autonomic nervous system, right? You have the fight or flight sympathetic, and the rest and recover parasympathetic. And if you realize most people are, the component of stress is that exercise is stress. It's good stress, it's stress, but it's stress nonetheless. Well, if your bucket of stress is almost full with distress, even if it is good stress, there's no more room in the bucket for it, and something's going to spill over. And so those days when that person shows that they're not at full capacity, then it's it's either a yellow or a red light day. And what I mean by that is, okay, you show me that normally you have no problem touching your toes, most basic movement you could look at. First thing I'm going to do is say, okay, well, let's go through and let's see if we can do some stuff to correct that. If it cleans up, then maybe I just modify the program that we're going to do today. But today's kind of a yellow light day. Today's not the day we go for a PR. If it doesn't clean up, if it's still like, yeah, it's not quite getting there today, today's a red light day. Whatever I program for today, crumple it up, throw it out. Today's going to be a day for more recovery, more movement-based stuff, and we'll save that for another day. But there's also the days that they come in and it's off the charts, where their breath hold times are up, their motor control's better, their grip strength is up. That's the day, okay, we're going to actually push harder. I want to red line it today, because today's a day that we're going to try to really get some big gains out of it. So being able to have a system where you can read and react, and there's some great systems to look at that, where you can look at HRV and all these other things, where you can see what is your readiness today, because I don't care if you're working with the greatest athletes in the world, and I've gotten to work with some good ones, is that they still have to drop their kids off at school. They still have to try to get a good night's sleep. They still have to try to eat, well throughout the day. And there's so much coming at the average human, whether you're an NFL MVP or whether you're just an accountant, that how you're handling that is going to tell me how you're going to handle training. And I think the being able to adjust to their readiness and understanding that there's 24 hours in a day, not just the hour you're with me, is really the next level of art in your training.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic, mate. I think what people have got to recognize is assessment is continuous. You know what I mean? It's like every single rep, every single set, every day, every time, every separate time they come in and train. I like to use this analogy, right? Because people are like, we say, yeah, assessments are continuous. I say, think of it like this. Eric, you come in and you train with me on Friday, right? We have a squat session and your squat is, mate, it's looking beautiful. You know what I mean? You're like smashing it out. You are strong. Then what you do is we finish our training session. You go and jump on a plane. You fly over to Ireland, right? You're on a stag do all weekend. You don't sleep. You flaming drink all day and all night. You're on the tables, woo, dancing at 3 a.m. You jump on a plane on Monday morning, come back home, and then you come in and do a training session with me on Monday afternoon or evening. Is your squat capacity the same as it was on Friday? You know what I mean? It's like, and people go, well, no, of course not. It's exactly, you know what I mean? So it varies. And those stressors, like you say, it can be, they've had a bad day at work. They didn't get a great amount of sleep last night. The nutrition's not been on point. They're a little dehydrated. All these factors, whether it's an elite level athlete or whether it's somebody who's a recreational, training for recreation or just for movement capacity or whatever it may be, everyone still has these stresses in their lives. And whether it's perceived or actual, your body only responds in one way. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, it's built for that saber-toothed tiger coming through the door. You know what I mean?
You sound like you speak from experience on one of those weekend benders.
Mate, I've not always been a health and fitness professional, Eric. Let's just put it that way. You know what I mean? And I'm from Manchester. Well, Eric, that's fantastic, brother. So what's been going on with you? What's been going on with Eric, and then what's in the pipelines for you, brother?
Well, obviously some things have dramatically changed in terms of my hands-on stuff. The two biggest things is my hands-on work with athletes, whether it's teams or whether it's individuals. That's done. We're shut down. As well as my ability to go out and teach workshops. You know, I was in Nashville when all of this kind of hit its peak, and got home just in time when everything shut down, but have been able to do that. So that's pivoted everything to now being online, whether it's doing Zoom sessions with high school teams or doing online education stuff. That stuff has had to change. And then there's things that were on the to-do list that have kind of been hanging at the bottom forever, that now it slid up to the top. And one of them is an online platform. And when I wanted to look at focusing on my niche, I really want to do something specific for baseball and softball, since I've had a good amount of experience and that's a passion of mine. So I created something called Diamond Revolution Training, which has a 12-week system that we kind of put players through in terms of complete development, starting them with movement, going up into athleticism, and then sports-specific things all the way through into power. So I've been building that model out and hoping to release that in the next couple of weeks. And every day is a new adventure, because you never know what's going to be coming at you. So it's been an interesting time, but I've also had the opportunity to do a whole lot of learning, which is a good kind of keep yourself humble and realize, just when you thought you kind of know a bunch of stuff, you realize you listen to somebody like I listened to a interview the other night with Al Vermeil, who's, you know, one of the most legendary strength coaches of all time. And you hear what he's done, and then you realize, wow, like, you know, you can fit what I know in a thimble compared to what that guy's been through. And so being able to they always say, surround yourself with the smartest people you can, and you can get that opportunity now with being able to do things virtually and online. If this would have happened 15 years ago, this would have been a very different experience, but it happened. If you could say there's a good out of this, when it happened is a great time, or we wouldn't be having this conversation.
That's true. That is true, my man. So we've got so what was the name of that of your website again, my mate? And anybody who's watching, listening, if you look in the podcast description, then we'll have all the links directly to all the stuff that Eric's been doing, so you can go on and check it out. But one more time, mate, what was it again?
Well, you can reach me at my site, which is ericdagati.com, ERICDAGATI.com. And on there, I actually have on the homepage is Ask Eric, is because I teach and do so many of these things like this, is that people will have a question later and say, hey, I'd love to ask this guy about this. Well, that's why I created it. You go on, ask me a question, it goes to my email, and I'll get back to you within a day or two. And then the new baseball project is diamondrevolutiontraining.com.
Fantastic, my mate. That's brilliant. Yeah, so that'll all be in the podcast description. And now, Eric, I know you have been waiting for this, and this better be a good one, because you said that you've done your own work. So I'm expecting, like, there's got to be research, like everything's got to be covered with this, right? Are you ready?
The first 46 minutes have just been filler, Ben. This is what I've been waiting for.
This is where the magic happens, my mate. These are the questions that matter. So, who would win a fight between a great white shark and a saltwater croc, and why?
Okay, so we've been talking a whole lot about assessment, evaluation. Okay, if I have to assess these two as athletes, you ready? Great white is winning hands down. Okay, so the only chance the saltwater croc has is based on environment, right? So like, I've worked with teams that are here in New Jersey, and we've gone down and had to play a football game in South Florida in September. And because of environment, we had to condition for that environment, but nothing simulates being in 90-degree heat with 90% humidity. So the great white likes cool waters close to shore. And for some reason, if that great white meandered off and got into some warmer waters or murkier waters, that's the only chance that saltwater croc has. Because other than that, you're looking at swim speeds on the great white of 60 kilometers per hour versus maybe 20 miles an hour with the saltwater croc. So speed, the shark's got to kill, right? They both attack the same way. They both use a surprise effect, right? But the great white has this strong sense of smell. Like they can sense a pack of seals up to 2 miles away with their scent, right? Or a drop of blood in like 100 gallons of water. So they can sense that. So it's going to know the croc's coming. So even if it tries to sneak attack, it's going to know it's coming. Now, here's the only other possibility for the saltwater, right? I always see in football, we know, and you know from in MMA, the low man wins, right? They both attack from the bottom. It's called breaching, what the shark does. They both attack from the bottom. So for some reason, somehow, that the croc gets under, maybe, because they have actually, if you're ready for this, the highest bite force of any mammal. And if it can somehow get under, then it's got a chance, right? But it's just too much size-wise. You're talking about, they're both around the same size, 15, 20 feet, but you're talking about 1,100 pounds for the saltwater croc, about 5,000 and with that, it's lean tissue. Like it's not a fat, immobile, shark. This is a lean, mean fight machine. They also have that camouflage color. They're the reason why they're gray with the white belly, so they can blend in with the bottom. So the chances of that being able to sneak up underneath makes it even harder. I'm going great white every day of the week.
Eric, that was the most in-depth researched answer that we have had. And we had a good one, we've had some good ones. John Berardi had a good one, his kids had been researching and all this, that, and the other. But that was solid research, my friend. That was solid research.
If you're not testing, you're just guessing, right? If you're not assessing, you're just guessing. So I always, the magic is in the assessment. I assess these two, and great white checks all the boxes.
I like it, my man. And you know what? I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to agree with you. But I'm notoriously bad for agreeing, and then somebody else will convince me of something else. Do you know what I mean?
Unless there's something that I miss, a secret weapon that they have. But I gotta go great white.
Eric, it has been an absolute pleasure, brother. Thank you very much for coming on the show today. And I'm going to finish it with a go, Eric Nagati! Did you know that DTS Fitness Education are actually an education company? That's right. So if you like what you see and you would like a little more, go to dtsfitnesseducation.com and check out our live and online courses.